Welcome to Women of Steel with me, Miriam Grace, the podcast where women who've had their mettle tested help us make important links for ourselves. I talk to remarkable women about their lives and challenges through the lens of my own work as a psychotherapist. We uncover stories which challenge the power of the status quo and validate the voices of marginalised or disadvantaged women. Baby loss is a far more common experience than you might think, and part of this is because we don't speak about it. Today I'm going to be speaking to Nicky Heppenstall from the charity Remember My Baby. Nicky lives in Derbyshire with her husband and they have two grown-up children. Their stillborn daughter Kim is the reason for Nicky's passion for remembrance photography. A keen photographer since her teens, she ran a successful part-time photography business once the children were at school. Now retired, she will never give up taking photographs. Nicky previously volunteered for SANS, a bereavement support charity, and is determined to see remembrance photography offered as a choice to parents as widely as possible across the UK. Nicky accepted the Cherished Keepsake award on behalf of Remember My Baby in 2016 at the Butterfly Awards, an evening dedicated to recognition of achievements in baby loss, and was presented with the Volunteer of the Year award at the 2019 Butterfly Awards. In 2024, Nicky was presented with a special recognition award by the Guild of Photographers for her work with Remember My Baby. So welcome, Nicky. I'm so pleased that you've said you'll come on this podcast to talk about something that isn't easy for people to talk about. And I know that part of your reason for doing that is because you would like others to know that they can talk about this issue. So just before we get into our subject matter, just tell me a little bit about where you live, where you're from, what your job is.
Originally I'm from Sutton Coldfield, but moved to Derby because that's where my husband lives. We're living on the outskirts of the city, a stone's throw from the Peak District, which we absolutely don't take as much advantage of as we should. In terms of a job, I've had a myriad of jobs, but once the children were old enough, once the children were in school, that was an opportunity for me to launch a photography business, which I ran part-time successfully for about 10 or 12 years. So technically I'm retired now. But not necessarily a lady of leisure.
No.
Which we'll talk about later.
Yes, well, we'll be talking about your charity and your charity work, and also about listeners who might benefit from that or who might want to get involved or support you in some way. But let's start with the story of your daughter, Kim. Tell us about Kim.
Well, Kim was my first daughter. I had a son, and that was a very traumatic delivery, unfortunately. And I was very, very cautious about entering another pregnancy. But the pregnancy went well, and the birth went extremely well. Unfortunately, she was stillborn. She was classified as stillborn because her lungs didn't inflate. She was born pink, with an APGAR of 8, but very quickly it became clear that something was wrong. She never breathed. She couldn't be made to breathe. So she was classified as stillborn. On the upside, because there is one, amazingly, I had a very positive birth experience with her. I'd taken steps to minimize my chances of being transferred into hospital. I wanted to have home births with my babies because I was hospital phobic. So avoiding going into hospital was a key decision in booking an independent midwife. So I didn't go into hospital at all during my pregnancy. I had all my bloods taken at home, I had private scans, and it was fabulous. Calm, no distress, just great. I had a birthing pool at home, and this time I got the opportunity to use it. And the midwife was fantastic. She was amazing. So went into labour overnight, and Kim was born at about 5:45 in the morning, I think, on a Friday. But when she came up out of the water, she didn't have that gasp reflex, so she didn't breathe. And the midwife was excellent. She, sprang into action, directed Mark to phone for the paediatric flying squad, 999. But ultimately, she died. But I'd had a positive pregnancy. I'd had a positive birth experience, which was hugely empowering and healing after the trauma of the first one. And to be in my own home environment in that calm, I couldn't have asked for a better birth. It was a huge disappointment to have a not live, but it was critical to me that I had that positive birth experience, because if I'd have had another traumatic birth, if I'd have been transferred in labour and been in hospital again, my son would have been an only one. I don't think I could have faced the prospect of another pregnancy.
Yeah. So, I mean, much more than a disappointment. You must have been bereft.
It was a shock. Most of the time, baby loss is a shock. In some circumstances, you find out ahead of time that things aren't going as you wanted. I can't deny it was a shock, but I think I clung to the fact that I'd had a positive experience right up until that point where she didn't breathe. It had gone so well, and that's what I didn't know at the time, but actually I really needed that. And I held my husband's hand 3 or 4 hours later, and I said, I can do that again, let's make another one. Which I don't think many women would say.
Wow,
at that point, But it was that positive birth was monumental for me.
Yes, so that you did the experience that you had with Kim. You did have an experience with Kim. You had 9 months. You had 9 months with her. And she is your daughter, and you are her mother still.
Absolutely, she's part of the family, and that'll never change. But to be in a situation where I was contented to face another pregnancy was huge, because I didn't want my son to be an only one. So, we unfortunately had 3 miscarriages over the next couple of years, which was a further roller coaster. Early, 2 of them were very early. One of them was later, and a blue light transfer in the middle of the night. So more trauma. But the end result was that we were certain that we wanted to try again.
Yeah.
And even after all of those disappointments and all of that roller coaster of emotions, we did try again, and we gave ourselves a deadline, and we said, well, let's give it until that date. And if nothing happens, then we'll draw a line in the sand and get on with our lives, because you are on hold. You can't book a holiday, you can't apply for a job, you can't book enroll on a course or something, because you're not sure, are you going to get pregnant? Are you going to stay pregnant if you get pregnant? It is a huge roller coaster.
It is. It takes a huge chunk out of women's lives. Not just when they're dealing with miscarriages, but listeners who might have gone through the IVF process will also be aware of that as well.
Exactly. And I do count myself extremely fortunate to have eventually followed through with a successful pregnancy and hit the absolute jackpot. Because I had the birth, the pregnancy was completely smooth, completely stress-free. went into labour, no problem. Same midwife at home with a pool. Honestly, it was, I hesitate to say textbook because it's not textbook, it's Mother Nature. It could not have been a better experience. I literally sailed through the whole thing and even got my ultimate goal, which was a natural third stage. I literally got the full Monty. I got everything I wanted, uh, which was amazing. The extremes in my birth experiences have been quite dramatic. But at the end of the day, I've got an amazing son who's getting married later this year. I've got a daughter upstairs who lives and breathes, um, which the other one didn't. But out of the experiences that I had in my journey through pregnancy and birth and loss and eventual success in completing the family and achieving what I'd always hoped I would achieve. I've kind of gone full circle.
Absolutely, I can't even imagine for me how you would have got into the birthing pool, with your daughter who lives and breathes, that time after the trauma that you'd been through. I think it's not the most usual response to think we'll go for it again. One of the key responses to a traumatic incident is to avoid anything that reminds you of it, that's similar to it. So if you get stuck in a lift, you wouldn't go in a lift again. So I'm wondering. There's also that grief process, and you took care to really mention about how good the midwife was. Were there days, were there moments where you questioned yourself, the procedure, or anything? Did you look for blame at any point in the grief process?
No, I didn't actually. I The post-mortem couldn't find anything. And my attitude to that was that, well, we've just been incredibly unlucky. It was important to have the post-mortem because if it had turned up anything like a genetic issue or whatever, that would have had implications for a future pregnancy. It could also have had implications for other family members planning a child. So I just put it down to bad luck, if you like, just unfortunate. But at the same time, I held on to the positive birth aspect.
Yeah. Yes,
and I think it would have been very different if I hadn't had that positive to hold on to. I do think that was probably a major factor in being able to say, well, it's unfortunate, we've been unlucky, to be able to continue to grieve and continue and not have a blame thing going on. I think that's probably quite freeing.
It really is, and I really hope that that's permission giving for our listeners today.
I couldn't fault the care. I could not fault the care I had. Nobody did anything wrong that day. If she wasn't meant to stay, if she was meant to provide that healing experience for me, but not stay, job done.
But there was another trauma or difficulty for you, part of your history, part of your character, which is your hospital phobia, and that you did avoid. Do you know where that came from, Nicky, or was it just always there?
I know exactly where it came from. I was not quite 3. Mum had left her handbag on the dining room floor unattended, and I went over to it and had a route through it. This is like what I've been told later, but I do remember parts of this experience quite vividly. I removed a small tin of travel sickness tablets from her handbag and managed to get it open, and apparently apparently the only one missing from the packet was the one they took from my tongue when, presumably, when Mum came in and said, "Oh no, you're not supposed to have those." Um, but Mum didn't know how many I might have consumed, and she immediately went into crisis mode. And I remember being driven to Good Hope Hospital by a neighbour next door but one. I can remember I think it was a Vauxhall Viva car in a kind of mustard colour. And I remember sitting on Mum's lap in the front passenger seat. Mum was wearing a white blouse with vertical stripes. There was, you know how you get a blouse that's got, you get the shiny stripes in the weave?
Mm.
There was shiny stripes, and in between those stripes were little blue flowers, like Swiss gentians.
Mm.
And I can remember that blouse as if I'm looking at it right now.
Mm.
And I was driven to the hospital, and I had my stomach pumped, and I can describe the cubicle and the male nurse with his white tunic and a big jug and a big funnel and a big long tube, and it was absolutely horrendous. So I was stomach pumped.
Oh, and you were 3.
So I was not quite 3, and so therefore hospital became the scene of a crime, the scene of an assault,
Mm. Mm.
which obviously I didn't really process that until my 30s, I guess, as part of thinking, oh well, shall we have a family? Well, I don't want to go to hospital. I'm planning home births.
Yeah, yeah. So you process this in your 30s, but you still weren't keen on
No,
attending
and I'm
hospitals.
still I remain an anxious patient.
Mm. Mm.
So if I need to go into hospital, I will advise the people around me. I'm an anxious patient. So just to be aware, so that I'm not in a situation where I'm. If I were to be triggered and become upset, they would understand why. But if I'm telling them about this, historical trauma, then hopefully I'll be given a little extra TLC. And that's happened. They talk to me and distract me. They talk to me about all sorts of other things. They get me talking about other things to distract me, and the time flies.
Mm. Mm.
So it's
Mm.
worthwhile saying I'm an anxious patient. I've had hospital trauma.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
But I think to plan to go into hospital to give birth, that wasn't on the cards. No
No.
way was I going to plan to go into hospital to give birth. I absolutely needed to be at home, and that didn't happen the first time around. It did happen the second and third, and I'm very, very grateful for that independent midwife
Mm. Mm.
because the NHS couldn't really cater to my specific needs.
Mm.
Really.
Mm. Yes, absolutely. So we've got this there's the trauma when you were little, and there's also obviously the trauma of losing a baby, and it's now is it 24 years on?
Yeah, 24 years next month.
Yeah, yeah, and I know that you always remember her. I mean, yeah, I'm sure you remember her every day, but that the magnolia trees are particularly special to you, aren't they?
Yes, the house opposite had that back then. It had a front garden with a magnolia tree, and the magnolia tree was in bloom at the time.
Mm.
So that's why I associate magnolias with Kim. We've since bucked the trend. Over the road, they got rid of the garden, and they have tarmac, and we bucked the trend, and we took away their tarmac, and we have a garden. So I have a figure of 8 box hedge, an infinity box hedge,
Mm.
with 2 magnolias planted. One is a stellata, and one is the variety that was across the road. It's the sort of most common pale pink
Mm.
magnolia that you see, of which there are so many in the neighbourhood. So as I drive around my neighbourhood, I see all these magnolias coming into bloom. We're north facing, so we must have a little microclimate here because mine are really late. Other people's stellatas are in full bloom, and mine is still in tight bud. And other of the other kind of the more traditional common magnolias, others are coming into bloom now, but mine is still in tight bud. So ours are late compared to
Mm.
everyone else's. But it's lovely to have about a month or 6 weeks of driving around spotting magnolias.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
It's great.
Mm,
Really,
mm,
it's lovely. It's
yeah,
really lovely to have
yeah.
that association.
Yes, and it's an association I have now as well.
As do others.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
do others. It's lovely. People message me. People send me pictures of magnolias, which is marvelous.
Mm. Oh,
It's
that's
great.
lovely to hear. And this is about people who understand, and people. One of the slogans I think that is part of the charity that we're going to go on to talk about after the break is, say her name or say their name. Can you
Mm.
clarify that? What's the slogan?
Well, say their name
Say
is a
their
common
name.
hashtag,
Yeah.
especially around Baby Loss Awareness Week
Mm,
and Baby Loss Awareness Month, which is in October. But
mm,
say their name is a hashtag that RMB uses regularly. It's so
mm,
important to say the baby's name. You cannot upset me by saying my baby's name. You
mm,
can upset me by avoiding saying my baby's name.
mm. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I want to know that people are aware of my baby and remember my baby. Um, and it's not a subject to skirt around.
Mm. Yes,
It's
and this
absolutely not.
yeah, and this brings us on to this question about what was missing 24 years ago in terms of our culture, our community, our understanding, and of course we know now that that ultimately led you on to being part of providing what had been missing for you. Tell me what was missing for you at that what was that 1990 something, was it 1990?
No, it was 2001.
2001. Okay, so
2001.
what was not there in 2001 that should
Well,
anybody go through this now, that will be there for them?
back in 2001, there wasn't a bereavement midwife at the hospital. There happened to be a mature midwife, a senior midwife, who took it upon herself to look after parents losing a baby. Um, but but there weren't bereavement midwives, there weren't bereavement suites where you can be gently guided through the process and the choices that you have. There wasn't any of that. And we weren't discouraged from spending time with her, but now it is proactively encouraged to spend time with your baby. So the hospital culture has changed significantly. It is still something of a postcode lottery, so it just does still depend up to a point, the experience that you have, depending on who might be on duty, which hospital you're at, who's on duty, etc. That does make a difference. But bereavement care in hospital has come on in leaps and bounds
Mm,
in the last 24 years, which is amazing. Some of the bereavement suites around the country are just fabulous,
mm,
um, which is marvelous. It's great. And obviously, SANS, the bereavement charity SANS, SANS has been around a very long time, and they looked after me very well back in 2001, and
mm,
they continue to do
mm,
that. The major difference now that we didn't have then is remembrance photography.
mm, mm,
I have handprints and footprints, and I have a tiny lock of Kim's hair. And back in those days, it was an ordinary ink stamp pad that you would have in an office. So I remember Kim's hands and feet being black with ink.
mm,
But nowadays they have this special paper and this special wipes. So you get the paper out and you apply the wipe to the baby's hands and feet one by one, and apply their hands and feet to the paper, and the imprint from that wipe develops. So it's not quite a black print on white paper as such, but it does mean that baby's feet are clean. They look clean, they're not covered in black ink. So it's really quite different
mm,
now than it
mm,
was. So I do have those little keepsakes in a memory box. A friend ordered me a really lovely customized keepsake box in pink, and we actually had to adopt a second box, a large shoe box, which I covered in paper to go with it, because we couldn't fit everything in the one box. But yes, now memory boxes are provided to hospitals from various charities. There's a lot more going on to help facilitate people having gentle guidance as to the choices they have. I think hand and footprints have probably been taken for some time, but it's only what probably 50 years ago that stillborns was whisked away, and mum was said, "Oh, don't forget all about it. You'll get over it. Maybe try again." And
Yeah.
they wouldn't hold their baby. They may not even see their baby. It's very different now. But you don't know what's available. You don't know all of this until you're in it. And even when you're in it, you don't know what's available. So 24 years on, I can see a stark difference in what it was then and what it is now. It's vastly improved.
That's really, really good to hear. And I know that the chaplaincies within hospitals and so on have training for staff and so on as well. Well, I think it's time for us to take a little break now, and then when we come back, you can do the big reveal as to to what Kim started really, and what your experience as the mother of a stillborn baby ended up catapulting you into, and we can talk in some more depth about that.
Experience therapy with Miriam Grace on a Wise Woman retreat in Derbyshire. Designed for your rest and return to self. Sound baths, a campfire evening, group therapy, reflexology and gentle yoga are threaded through a programme of personal quiet time and journaling.
I've never felt so looked after in my entire life, and I count myself so lucky to have been able to experience the retreat.
You will feel safely held through soulful, psychological and therapeutic elements by your experienced, mature and qualified facilitators.
The joy, the warmth, the generosity, your beautiful home. It was a turning point in my life.
With nutritious home-cooked food and your own double bed, retreats run from Thursday evening to Sunday afternoon at a bespoke venue in the Peak District. For more reviews, search Wise Women Derbyshire on Facebook, Instagram or on the web.
I so desperately want to return. It was just a wonderful experience.
Oh, welcome back after the break. Today I'm talking to Nicky Heppenstall from Remember My Baby charity, and we've been talking about the loss of her daughter Kim and what provision there was for bereaved parents 20 plus years ago. And now we're going to talk about Nicky's part in provision for parents who have been bereaved in the way that she was, and how a personal pleasure turned into something much bigger than she could even have imagined. Nicky, tell us about Remember My Baby.
Well, Remember My Baby is a charity close to my heart. And this is something that came about by chance more than design. Remember My Baby offers remembrance photography to families facing the loss of their baby before, during or shortly after birth. So we mainly meet families with their stillborns, but we also go into neonatal units where babies have been born too early, too poorly, or both, and are not expected to survive. Sometimes we do a home session or a hospice visit where baby's on palliative care. And really, this is an ideal opportunity. This is the only opportunity, really, to capture images that need to last a lifetime, because when you're faced with the loss of a baby, you're losing a lifetime's potential for capturing images, and photographs are all around us all the time these days. So, first crawl first smile, first steps, first day at play school, first day at school. All of this is gone in the blink of an eye when you lose a baby. But Remember My Baby volunteers are able to come to the hospital and capture all of the little details. They capture you with your baby, extended family, perhaps siblings, and it's a significant contribution to the memory making process. So we mentioned about hand and footprints previously. We take photographs all the time. We take photographs of our children all the time. We have photographs all on the walls, on our computers, on the laptop background and such, the wallpaper on your phone. Why wouldn't you also photograph this much loved, much wanted, beautiful baby so that you can remember what they looked like?
Yes, yes. I think
forever.
I think with any bereavement, one of the the hard points is when you can't remember what
Yeah.
that person looks like. But I was saying to you in the break, some people do think it is weird to photograph a dead baby, and just don't get it.
There is a small minority. Obviously, I speak about baby loss and remembrance photography any opportunity I get. Even getting into a taxi, coming away from an event, going. If I've been, I was training. That was it. I delivered some training up north, and I was getting in the taxi to go back to the station to go home. And he says, "So where are you going?" "I'm going home." "What have you been doing today?" "I've been delivering training. I'm involved with a charity." And I'm sorry to say I ruined the taxi driver's day because he was really like, "Oh no, that's no, oh no," and he was clearly quite taken aback and not in a good way, for which I apologise. But the critical thing here is choice. And yes, it might seem to some people like a really odd thing to do, or a weird thing, or a creepy thing, but actually this isn't new. This isn't a new thing. There's a guy in Chicago who does remembrance photography in a very documentary style, Todd Hochberg. He's been doing this for many years, going into hospitals and spending time with families, taking these photographs. And he collects memento mori photographs, Victorian photographs, where in the early days of photography, obviously it was only within reach of the rich to start with. But there are photographs of children and babies and children, 2, 3, 4 years old, and adults. There are photographs of adults taken, deceased adults, in the sort of latter half of the 1800s, and Todd collects these.
Yeah. What about the parents themselves? Where do you get feedback from them? Do you get messages and notes?
We do, and it's lovely to read. We don't hear from everybody, and it's very special when we do. Much like with photographers in general, you send a gallery link to your client, and if you don't immediately get a response saying, "Oh my God, I love them," you feel like, "Oh, they must be awful." This is part of imposter syndrome with many photographers, But we don't hear from all of the parents, but when we do, it is extra special. And overwhelmingly, the feedback is positive, because you do forget the details. You do forget what your baby looks like. It can in the weeks after you've come home and you've had the funeral and the dust begins to settle, it can feel like it was all a bad dream, and you can question whether it even actually happened. But photographs, along with the footprints and handprints and such, these are tangible mementos. This is evidence. Actually, we had a beautiful baby, and they're not here, but we have, we can cherish these images.
Yes.
And this helps through your grief experience.
Yes. I think it is this witnessing, and when you said about it can seem like a terrible dream as if it didn't happen, it is so important to have that verification and that validation that this did happen. And this is again linked to the importance of saying their name, say their name.
It is. You can't upset a grieving parent by mentioning their baby's name. They're upset anyway.
Yes.
But if you mention their baby's name, that helps with this, the validation of the fact that actually they did lose their baby. I remember people avoiding me. And if it was a day where I wasn't really comfortable to talk to someone, I would actually avoid them and I wouldn't make eye contact, at the local shops or whatever. But if I was okay to talk, I was having a good day, if you like, and composed and such, I would make eye contact and I would smile and I would be proactive and go over and say, oh, hello, and we would have a chat. And you could visibly see the discomfort in their body language. But I was indicating to them that I was okay and I was okay to talk and it's fine, because you find yourself comforting them because of their discomfort with your situation.
Yeah, that's a tough one, Nicky.
Yeah, and this is why we need to talk about it. This is why we need to talk about death. We are all going to die.
Yeah.
What's the quote? There's nothing certain in life but death and taxes. We're all going to die, and I'm a huge advocate for talking about baby loss, mentioning our babies by name. My baby was called Kim, and she died. It's fine, And I really want people to find the courage to talk to people they know who have been through this, because the people, if someone comes to me and says, I heard about your baby that you lost, and mention her it was wonderful to have them mention her by name, because she was here. She existed. She made a vast difference in my life. How could she not?
Yeah, and I think you have really made Kim be remembered in the local community. I met you first at the Mums and Tots playgroup, and I know about Kim, and I remember her when the Magnolias come out. How did Remember My Baby start, Nicky?
Well, several years after I'd lost Kim, I discovered that remembrance photography was a thing. I was completely unaware. I mentioned earlier about the memento mori photographs from the 1800s. I was completely unaware of all of that. But I came across a charity, American charity, providing remembrance photography, and I was blown away. I think I was about 7 years post-loss, something like that. And I looked at this website and these images and a video clip, and I was just like, wow, this is a thing. Oh my goodness, I have to do this. I have to do this. I really do. And I've been a keen photographer right from my teens. My dad was a very keen photographer, although we never really had the opportunity to share that enthusiasm for photography because he passed away when I was 19. And as a teen, I was like, yeah, whatever. So we didn't really connect over it, and that's something I regret that we didn't have that opportunity. But having been keen on photography, I got my first digital camera in about 2007, something like that. So within a few months of me having a proper digital camera, I discovered that remembrance photography was a thing, and then I thought, right, well, I need to up my game actually, because I could do this professionally. I could, get some training and upgrade my kit and software and insurance. So that's what I did. I became a professional photographer, albeit part-time, so that I could volunteer for that charity. So then I met lots of like-minded people, lots of other volunteers. Fast forward to 2014, it became clear there were obstacles in getting into NHS hospitals with this to provide this service, and it became clear that we really needed a dedicated UK charity to provide this. So we decided, we had a brainstorming session, and And that's how it came about. Remember My Baby. It does exactly what it says on the tin. Remembrance Photography. And it's Kim's footprints in the logo, which is just fabulous.
That's lovely.
So it's great because I see them all over, all over my Facebook and all the materials that we produce and such. But we 8 of us got together to launch Remember My Baby, and we recruited volunteers. And we last August we were 10 years old. In that time, we have met over 7,500 families. We provided over 250,000 images.
Wow.
It's just to be part of a charity that facilitates something that I didn't have the opportunity to take advantage of makes up for that. I did take my camera into the hospital. I did take my camera into the hospital to photograph Kim, but she was born very early on the Friday morning, and we didn't get to see her properly until Monday late afternoon, by which time she'd changed considerably. And I don't even know that I could have picked her out of a lineup as being mine. I have a sort of snapshot in my head of the second that she came up out of the water in the birth pool. And fortunately that hasn't faded. But the photographs that I took of her that are 4 days later are not ones that I have on display. They're not ones I share. I think I can count on the fingers of one hand how many people have actually seen those. So the images that we're producing now just blow me away.
Yes.
All of those little details, and the hands and the feet and the fingernails, and the profile of the face and the shape of the ear and eyelashes. It's just incredible what we can do. And I would have loved that. I really would.
Yes. I'm wondering what the impact is on your mental health and your confidence in creating and being part of Remember My Baby.
Being hospital phobic, I began to overcome that in a small way through SANS, because I was meeting bereaved parents and such, and I did go to the hospital when they opened the bereavement suite, which has a courtyard garden, and that was very challenging, but I did it. But being involved with Remember My Baby means that I've been able to go into hospital to meet a family. And I won't say it wasn't stressful to start with, but it's more important than me being able to provide images for that family, because I know the benefit of having those images. To be able to provide those, that's more important than the stress of me entering the hospital premises. It does help greatly that the hospital has been vastly remodeled and rebuilt since I had my traumatic experience with my first baby. That does help. But I am quite relaxed and laid back to be, I could even sit with midwives at the midwife station having a cup of tea for 10 minutes whilst we wait for mum to be ready because she's just got showered and dressed and she's putting a bit of makeup on or whatever. And I'm fine. It's okay. It doesn't faze me at all. As I said before, I do remain an anxious patient, but I can go into the hospital and meet these families without any issues. And the other thing is training. If someone said to me 15 years ago, you're going to be delivering training to a room full of photographers, no way, because I don't want to be, I don't like being front and center, don't like being center of attention. To be in front of a room full of people fills me with dread. Not a public speaker, very, very shy, not confident with that at all. Totally out of my comfort zone. But I have sat and delivered training to a dozen or so people in the room with a PowerPoint presentation, and I've done it several times. And then the other thing is I've spoken to a much larger gathering about Remember My Baby a few times, uh, accepting an award, the Cherished Keepsake Award at the Butterfly Awards, and also being at. I was invited to a fundraising dinner in Birmingham at one of the big banks. They have an annual do, and they raise money for 3 charities at a time. So there was myself and 2 trustees from 2 other charities, and we each had to stand at the front with a microphone, being asked a few questions for a few minutes about our charity. There's like 200 people in the room. And that's not my comfort zone at all. But I can do it now. I don't leap at the opportunity to do it, but I can do it.
Yes.
And it is exhausting. It is absolutely exhausting, but I can do it competently now, and that's huge for me.
Yes, I think that part of what you're saying, Nicky, is that it's easier when you're doing it for other people. So it's easier to go to hospital for other people. It's easier to be present with, the very sad fact of a baby that's perhaps not taken a breath, or that's died, or it sounds as if sometimes they're about to die, or they're not expected to make it. That must be so hard and sad. But you wrote to me, it feeds your soul.
It does. I this is the thing, the rewards of being able to do this. It's lovely to capture someone's wedding. It's lovely to be part of their special day. But this is a whole different ball game. It really is a privilege and an honour to be among the very small group who meet the baby.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I get to hold the baby too, which is lovely, because it's not, when you have a baby, normally you bring baby home and lots of people want to visit and get lots of cards and flowers, and it's lovely, and they see you out and about with a pram. All of that is gone. And it's only a small number of people, family, extended family, special friends, who actually get to meet that baby who's passed away. And we are very, very privileged to be a part of that very small circle of people who get to meet that baby. And that's something very precious.
I can feel that, and I can see the emotional connection for you. And I'm quite blown away by your capacity to do that and to be with people in that moment. And I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of thousands of parents, to say I'm so grateful you're out there providing that service. I know that photography as a bit of a special interest for you is also very soothing. What is it about those days that you get on your own when it's just you and your camera? What helps you about being a photographer on those days alone?
I think it's the fact that I can lose myself in the viewfinder. I'm not one of these who uses the screen. I'm very much a viewfinder, old school viewfinder photographer. I would never buy a camera that didn't have a viewfinder. Why would you do that? Anyway, but I can, if I'm a bit low or a bit cross or frustrated or something, and I need to step away for a moment, very often I will pick up the camera and go in the garden for 10 or 15 minutes, and there's always something to photograph. But by the same token, I'll go out for a whole day, or I'll have a trip out to a National Trust place, or walk along the canal. I can find something to photograph anywhere, literally anywhere. And I love to be able to lose myself through the viewfinder. I'm composing my image. I'm looking at the details. I'm looking for the golden ratio. I'm literally focusing, pun intended, literally focusing on what I can see to make a picture. And it might not be for anybody but me, and I might never do anything with it, but that's not the point. It's the process that calms me and takes me out of myself and separates me from whatever it is that I'm finding frustrating or challenging or stressful that day.
That's a real call to for people to pick up their cameras, I think, because I did an interview recently with Jermaine Haifa, and she, like myself and like you, has ME, and we were talking about how if you went to an art class, one of the main, the main points of art is observation. It's that noticing and seeing. There's the second part is where you sort of might create an image, but even when you're bedbound or stuck at home, you can still have that photographer's eye, that observation, that you can go out into your garden and see that detail. So the mindfulness in photography is worth noting for any listeners who are feeling a bit stuck about doing something for themselves. Is just find that picture and take it. You don't need to be professional. You don't need to be professionally trained. However, your photographers, the ones that you're training, they do need to be trained, and you're doing that training. What if a photographer is listening in to us right now and they think, I'd like to volunteer for Remember My Baby?
Well, the first step is to hop onto the website and the Facebook page to get a feel for what we do. And there's information on the website about what is required. We do need photographers who are at a very high level. You don't have to be a professional working photographer. You can be a highly skilled enthusiast. It's not essential to be working. But we need photographers who know their kit. You need to be able to walk into that room and instinctively know how to assess the lighting so that you can make the best of the light in that scenario to capture these images, because this is a one-shot deal. There's no opportunity to have a second go with this. So in terms of the training we provide is very much more strategies for coping and how to approach the situations and the scenarios that you might encounter. We expect photographers to be knowledgeable about their kit so that they know what settings to use. So we're not teaching photography, we're teaching how to approach this kind of photography.
Yes, and such a different setting to something like a wedding, of course. And then there's those who perhaps don't want to be involved in the charity in terms of volunteering. But what about these sessions cost money to put on, to run, presuming that the photographers need their expenses paying, their petrol and so on. So can you tell us a little bit about the funding side, and can you ask our listeners to consider donating?
Absolutely. As with all charities, we have overheads. We're fortunate that we don't have premises. We're entirely run online. But yes, there are costs. And we have part-time staff. We couldn't manage without part-time staff because we've grown beyond the point at which we can purely be a volunteer-led charity. We were volunteer-led for several years, but yes, in terms of expenses, going to a session, for me, it's very simple because I'm literally 3 miles from the hospital and I don't claim 6 miles worth of mileage. But we can travel 30 or 50 miles to go to a session. We don't have volunteers local to every single unit. So I will go further afield as far as Sheffield or Rotherham, for example, and claim back my expenses. So yes, we do need funding to cover all of these costs, in insurance and web hosting and storage. We store all the images indefinitely, so we have to pay for storage because we want people to be able, if they lose their images, their laptop crashes, they can come back to us and get a link to their gallery again.
Yes.
All of this costs. So yes, donating. A donation of £10 or £15 can cover the cost of an average expense claim per remembrance photography session. But a donation of £100, that might cover our call centre costs for half a week or something. We have a free phone number, which is more expensive these days than we like to think about. So yes, all donations, any donations, are extremely welcome to help us to reach more parents, recruit more photographers, reach more hospitals. We would dearly love to be able to increase the network. We're in about a third of hospitals so far, and we need to at least double the pool of photographers, over time. These are our long-term goals.
Yes, and you're solely dependent on donations at the moment. Is that right, Nicky?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, just coming back, another way that we can help that doesn't cost is raising awareness, like, share, comment on all your social media posts, and just keep mentioning Remember My Baby, and all this will be in the show notes on this podcast episode, and that includes the website. But how best could we support, if we know somebody who loses a baby? What's the most important thing for us to remember should this happen to somebody that we know?
I think the key thing is to remember that you can't upset somebody more than they already are by telling them about Remember My Baby. They've just lost their baby, or they've just been told that they will lose their baby. They are more likely to be upset if you don't tell them. If they find out that you knew about Remember My Baby and you didn't tell them further down the line, and they could have had this but didn't know. So don't feel that you have to step on eggshells. Don't feel that you can't say anything. Even if you get in touch with a family member, for that family member to suggest it. I can't stress enough how important it is for families to have this opportunity as a choice. They might decide not to go for it, but if you don't know about it, you can't choose.
Absolutely.
We do our best to provide a photographer for every single request. We don't always do that, which is why we need more photographers on board. But I know that if you don't have the photographs taken, you can't look at them. If you do have the photographs taken, you can choose whether or not to look at them, and you can decide when you feel you might be ready to look at them.
Yes.
And I know that some of our families haven't looked at them and won't look at them for some time. But by the same token, we get so many messages and comments on socials especially, where they've looked at their images and they love their images, and they've had prints done, and they've got a canvas above the fireplace, and they've got a photo at work, and these children, these babies, are part of their everyday lives and part of their everyday family galleries. And why should they not be?
Absolutely. It really helps. I think, say their name is a fantastic hashtag. And if we had intended to send our friend flowers on the birth of their baby, of course, we can still send the flowers and we can still mention their baby.
Absolutely. Why would you not?
And you've said again and again, ask people about their baby, say their name, be present and listen. And do you want to say what we should never say? We should never say...
Never ever say anything that starts with "at least." Just don't go there. At least you can get pregnant. Maybe they can't another time. At least you have another child. No, which one of yours could you do without?
Yeah.
If it starts with "at least," just don't say it. Everybody means well, and we understand that. But anything that begins "at least," don't say it.
That's
Mention baby's name. It is. Mention baby's name hold this person's hand, ask if there's anything you can do. Can I cook a meal for you? Would you like me to do the laundry for you? Whilst, you go to the undertaker's and sort that out. I'll deal with this. Offer practical help and listen and be present. Say baby's name, but never say anything that begins with at least.
I'm so grateful for you supporting us to support others and giving us the opportunity to support you and your charity to support others. Are there any closing words that you would like to finish with, Nicky?
I think really I want to stress about breaking the taboo, not just about the death of a baby, but about death in general. I mean, we're all going to die. We expect to bury our parents. We don't expect to bury a child. And I think it's way past time that death became not perhaps an everyday conversation, but death needs to be a conversation on a regular basis. People need to break the taboo and normalize what is an everyday reality. Families that I meet are living with the death of their baby on a daily basis. And although as I say, we do expect to bury our parents, you expect to lose people as you go through life. I don't really understand why it remains such a taboo, as if tempting fate. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah, we can't avoid it by pretending it doesn't exist.
Exactly that. Why would we pretend it doesn't exist? It's definitely going to happen. And I would much rather be able to mention to my husband, oh no, don't do the funeral, cremation. Just scatter me anywhere, don't care, don't mind. Or scatter me somewhere specific. I just don't think that there's everything to be gained and nothing to be lost by having these conversations and normalizing death as part of everyday life, because it's a fact that death is part of everyday life.
Yes, I completely agree with you, and I hope that we'll be doing some more episodes with you and other people where we can break these taboos. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It's been great. Thank you very much indeed.
Long after people have lost their baby, it might feel as if everybody else has moved on. Please don't feel you have to come to terms with or get over any bereavement according to somebody else's timing. If you've been affected by baby loss in any way, please look at the show notes, which contain links to support organisations such as SANS, the Stillborn and Neonatal Death Support Organisation. You deserve to have a safe space to tell your story and to be listened to. Thank you for listening to Women of Steel, created and hosted by me, Miriam Grace, psychotherapist at Blue Skies. If you'd like to know more about my work as a therapist and writer, you can follow me on social media. Please take a look at the show notes for information and contact details. And in the meantime, be kind to yourself.